Imagine being in the middle of a violent storm. The wind is screaming, waves are crashing over your boat. You think you might die, and the only person who could help you is asleep. That's exactly what happened to the disciples one night on the Sea of Galilee. But what happened next is one of the most unbelievable moments in the entire Bible. Because with just 3 words, Jesus stopped the storm. It had been a long day. Jesus had spent hours teaching large crowds by the sea. People were everywhere, listening, learning, hoping to hear a word that could change their lives. As evening came, Jesus turned to his disciples and said something simple. "Let us go over to the other side." So they climbed into a boat and began crossing the Sea of Galilee. Now, many of the disciples were experienced fishermen. They had spent their lives on this water. They knew the sea. But the Sea of Galilee had a reputation. Storms could appear suddenly, without warning. And that night, one did. As the boat moved farther from shore, the wind began to rise. The calm water turned rough. Then suddenly, a violent storm crashed down on them. The wind roared across the water. Massive waves slammed against the boat. Water began filling it. These weren't inexperienced men panicking over nothing. These were fishermen who knew storms, and even they were terrified. The boat was rocking violently. Water was pouring in. The disciples were shouting over the wind. Some were trying to control the sails. Others were bailing water. And while all of this was happening, Jesus was asleep in the back of the boat, on a cushion, while the storm raged. Finally, someone looked toward the back of the boat and saw Jesus sleeping. So they woke him up in desperation. "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Think about that question for a moment. Don't you care? They had seen Jesus heal people. They had seen miracles. But in this moment of fear, they wondered if he even cared. It's a deeply human question, the kind we still ask today when life feels overwhelming and God feels silent. Jesus stood up. The wind was still raging. The waves were still crashing. But Jesus didn't panic. He didn't shout instructions to the disciples. He didn't try to control the boat. Instead, he spoke to the storm itself. 3 simple words. Peace. Be still. And instantly, everything changed. The wind stopped. The waves settled. The sea became completely calm. In a single moment, the violent chaos turned into perfect stillness. Imagine the silence after that storm. Moments earlier, the disciples were fighting for their lives. Now the water was like glass. The wind was gone, and the disciples stood there, staring at Jesus. Then Jesus turned to his disciples and asked them a question. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And the disciples looked at each other in awe. They asked a question that echoes through history. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. They had seen miracles before, but this moment was different, because only God controls the wind and the sea. This story isn't just about a storm on the Sea of Galilee. It's about the storms we face in life. Moments when everything feels out of control. Moments when fear takes over. Moments when we ask the same question the disciples asked. "Lord, do you even care?" But the story reminds us of something powerful. Even when it feels like Jesus is silent, he is still in the boat. And when he speaks, even the storms must obey. So the next time life feels like a storm, remember the night Jesus spoke to the wind and the waves. The same voice that calmed that sea is still powerful today. And sometimes, all it takes is 3 words. Peace. Be still.